President Harris has been accused of adopting a fake urban accent to appeal to black and working class voters after delivering the same speech in two different voices just a few hours apart.
You better thank a union member for sick leave. You better thank a union member for paid leave. Thank unions for sick leave. Thank unions for paid family.
So folks, there were a lot of negative news stories for Kamala Harris this week. You had ABC rejecting her attempts to rig the presidential debate. You had Trump and RFK Jr. taking a lot of legal victories in terms of the court cases and ballot access and all of that. But I think perhaps one of the most underlooked stories of this week was the fact that Kamala Harris invented a brand new accent, and literally in the span of a couple of hours, this is how shameless it really was. You probably saw this, but I don't want people to forget. Take a listen.
You better thank a union member for the 5-day work week. You better thank a union member for sick leave. You better thank a union member for paid leave. You better thank a union member for vacation time. You better. Let's just get through the next 64 days.
So again, just to reiterate, those clips I showed you are literally on the same day. Within the span of a couple of hours, she goes from talking like this in Detroit versus talking totally normal with a normal voice in the city of Pittsburgh. Now, I know like people don't care, you know, this is just generally considered to be not that big of a deal, but I feel like in a normal world, that especially under the way the Democrats just view politics and race and all of that, this should be seen as incredibly insulting, as incredibly stereotypical. And if you don't believe me, let's do a little thought exercise, right? Imagine if I did this. Imagine if I was speaking to a crowd of Asian Republicans and I went up there like, oh, hello everybody, we're going to vote for Donald Trump. Oh, people would be like, what the heck, right? People would look at me funny. They would be like, that's incredibly insulting. That is so ridiculously stereotypical. But when Kamala Harris does it in front of black voters, it's suddenly completely okay. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't know, just some things to consider. But folks, if you enjoy the content, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you are new. Now, Matt Walsh has a new movie, I believe, currently out in theaters called Am I Racist? So be sure to check that out. Shameless plug. And he recently went on Piers Morgan to discuss this little Kamala Harris accent change. And let's react to that and talk about that here today, because not only do I think it fundamentally demonstrates how fake she is, but it's just so strange on top of that. So let's take a listen.
President Harris has been accused of adopting a fake urban accent to appeal to black and working class voters after delivering the same speech in two different voices just a few hours apart.
You better thank a union member for sick leave. You better thank a union member for paid leave. Thank unions for sick leave. Thank unions for paid family leave.
Many people making this observation have, of course, been accused of racism, as was former President Trump, for claiming that Harris only recently started identifying as black. Whether it really matters or not is besides the point. What's striking is the taboo and how difficult it now is to ask questions about race without being promptly branded a racist. Matt Walsh's documentary, What is a Woman?, shone an uncompromising light on gender insanity, and his new movie, Am I a Racist?, turns its glare on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And he joins me now. Matt, great to have you back on Uncensored.
Again, okay, can I do this then? All right, next time I'm speaking in front of like an Asian Republican group, I'm gonna say, hello! That's literally what she's doing, right? Don't say, oh, you're like, no, that's literally what she is doing, okay? So again, if you don't think it's weird, if you don't think it should be seen as insulting, then compare my thought exercise. And then hours later, I'll speak to a bunch of mostly white Republicans. I'll be like, hello, everybody. You know, like that's what's going on here.
Hi, Piers. Thanks for having me.
Just want to start before we get into the movie, which is great, by the way, as was the last one. Kamala Harris and her accent. Is it racist to even ask why she's talking in a different accent?
No, I mean, of course not. And look, many Democrat politicians in particular have done this, where they take on a different tone, a different accent, depending on the audience. It's just that with Kamala Harris, we get this really, especially the most recent thing, where it's the exact same lines she's giving a couple of hours apart, and it's
so
just
shameless.
Of course, it's very noticeable. Everybody notices it. and it's insulting to the intelligence of the people that she's trying to pander to. And on top of it, as many have pointed out, you know, the accent she puts on, it sounds like Foghorn Leghorn or something. It's not, it doesn't even sound like what she's trying to make it sound like. So, because she grew up in Montreal, Canada, and so she should just embrace that fact about herself and be authentic. That's all we're really asking for. Is
but
just,
in a way, it's a prime...
Be authentic is what we want.
Right. I mean, in a way, it's a prime example of the kind of thing you talk about in the movie, which is the weaponizing of calling people racist. Whenever they raise any issue or question about anything related to race, is a real problem in modern society. It's fueled by social media, by cancel culture, by all of these terribly insidious things which are going on. And what it creates is an atmosphere where people almost dare not talk about anything to do with race for fear of immediately being called a racist.
Exactly. And that's because you have, and this is what we try to expose in the film, you have these grifters, these so-called anti-racist types, DEI types, and this is their goal. This is what they do. They try to make these conversations completely, you know, fraught. They want you to be focused on it all the time. They come to you and they say, oh, you know, you think you're not racist because you think racism is a simple thing. If you don't hate people of other races, you think you're not racist. But actually, you are racist, and the fact that you think you aren't racist is just more evidence that you are even more racist than you thought. And they keep people in, it's like, for people that fall into this, it becomes this like spiral where they're looking into themselves, constantly inspecting their own minds and their own motivations, and sort of convincing themselves that they're actually racist when they aren't. And part of that is, again, making the concept of racism way more complicated and abstract than it actually is, because in reality, racism is just having a negative opinion of someone because of their race, thinking a certain race is inferior to yourself. That's racist. If you don't have that feeling about someone, then you're not racist. You might have other...
Well, the entire point of it fundamentally is to shut down any discussion of questioning their ideas, basically. And so I think in many ways, it is sort of a social control mechanism, right? Of, hey, you can't criticize what we're doing, even though in this case like this, it's so incredibly shameless, because you'd be racist, or you'd be sexist, or you'd be homophobic or xenophobic or something like that. It's ultimately what it is, right? And that way, if you can broaden the definition as much as possible, then you can throw it out at anyone, and then at that point, nobody can question really what you're trying to do. So
there are flaws, we all do,
right?
But you're not racist. Congratulations. You can just move on from that. But they don't want you to move on.
No, exactly right. And also, it diminishes people who suffer from genuine racism and their validity of their cause, because there's so much other stuff being thrown out there which just isn't racism. And so actual racism gets kind of lost in the wash. I want to just show viewers who've not obviously seen.
So there we have it, folks. I guess if we call out the fact that Kamala Harris literally does not talk like this, and this is a very stereotypical accent, and by the way, she grew up in Canada. Okay, she grew up in Canada. No, that makes you racist. Don't do that. So again, if that's the standard, then I say, again, next time I'm in front of Asian Republicans, I'm going to talk in a very stereotypical, like kung fu movie accent. And what are you going to say? Huh? How's it racist? No, well, you can't even call me racist. I'm a minority. I don't know. That said, folks, let me know your thoughts on Kamala Harris's new accent in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.